Hi, this is Ned Siegfried from Siegfried and Jensen. As proud sponsors of BeliefCast, we hope you are inspired by Todd's weekly podcasts, which contain so many courageous stories of recovery and personal growth. Remember, it's not what happened in the past that matters, it's what happens in the future. We invite you all to work hard and be optimistic about your future. Enjoy today's podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Inspires BeliefCast. Thank you once again for tuning in. I really appreciate all your support. I love you guys so much. I want to thank our sponsors, Siegfried and Jensen, Wasatch Recovery, Veracity Networks, and iHill Institute. You guys are fantastic. The belief and trust you have in me with having your names attached to this BeliefCast means so much to me. And you have allowed to get this out to so many people. We are downloading like crazy. So many people have reached out and said how much these BeliefCasts have helped help themselves and help their family members. And it's because of the amazing guests I've had on over the years. And today's going to be no different. Today we're joined by Christian Smith. I think he goes by Christian. We're going to find out here in a minute. But I work with Christian right now currently at Wasatch Recovery.
Yep.
He's in our marketing department. He goes out and he helps find people who are struggling that need some help and he gets them in here. He's got an amazing story. I've known Christian's extended family for 30 years plus, right?
It's a small world.
Yeah, such a small world, and just this fantastic guy. You guys are going to love his story. You're going to just love his demeanor. You're going to love the way he just carries himself, and today's going to be a great day. So do you go by Christian?
There's a story there. Grew up, my full name is Christian,
Okay.
but I grew up going by Chris all my life.
Okay.
And then 12 years ago when I decided maybe it's time to make a change, I decided I would change my name, go by my given name, Christian.
Interesting.
Thinking maybe I would be a little more Christ-like in that.
Wow.
It doesn't work very much, but sometimes it does. And the family still, they're confused. They don't call me Christian. It's Chris.
It's Chris.
And the only time growing up, the only time I ever heard Christian was when my mom was really pissed at me.
When you're in trouble.
Yeah, then I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I love that, though, in the sense that and we're going to get to your story here in a minute, when you changed your life back doing the right thing, the best that you could, it was almost like a mindset, like saying, hey, I'm changing everything, and I'll even change my name back to what it needs to be as maybe a reminder, I'm not that guy anymore that I was messing up, in drugs, all that stuff, jail, you name it. We'll get there, but I love that, actually. Thanks for sharing that.
you're welcome.
Very cool. Well, why don't we start, Christian, with where you grew up? Tell us about your family life, and let's start from there so people can kind of get to know you a little bit better.
Okay. I am the fourth child of 8, and I think there's the middle child thing there, I'm sure there's been a lot of studies on it, but
Yeah.
anyway, never. I'm the fourth child of 8 and grew up here in Utah, right? Went to Cottonwood High School and the elementary schools and junior highs that funneled into it. Socioeconomically, we were middle class. Dad was an insurance guy, owned an insurance agency, and we didn't have a lot, but we didn't go without anything of great significance.
Right.
Our idea of a vacation was, driving to Laguna Beach, California, and that was a good time. And every once in a while we'd have to go to Disneyland. Not a big Disneyland guy.
You're not?
No, I went to Disneyland many years ago, and I was probably loaded the whole time. And we hadn't left. I had 2 younger daughters at the time, and we hadn't left the parking lot and got into the gate when daughter Sarah goes, "Will you carry me, Dad?" And I just hated that.
You're
that
like,
was
oh
just-
boy,
yeah,
here
yeah,
we go.
yeah.
Well, so you're the middle of 8.
8.
So how was that? How is that having that many siblings? And I mean,
We
describe that.
We really got along well.
Mm-hmm.
The oldest, Marcia Jo, I never met in this life. She died in a car accident when she was 2 years old. And that's kind of, some of that is, my upbringing was shaped based on my mom's ability to cope with that, the loss of a daughter, where Mom was driving the car.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
probably fell asleep is what they determine happened. And that kind of I can imagine that would affect anybody that goes through that experience.
Right.
So I think a lot of our upbringing was, Mom was pretty protective, particularly of me. I think a lot of that protection and came from previous loss.
Wow.
But after Marcia Joe, then I have two older brothers, and we're sports guys. We think we're athletes, and so we play a lot of sport together, and it was oftentimes not playful.
Right.
There were bloody noses involved, and busted ankles and broken arms, and but in the dynamics, I was a little better athlete than brothers, even though they were. My older brother Scott's 4 years older than I am, and Thad's 2 years older than I am. And in early teenage years, I could hold my own against my older brothers.
Yeah.
And that gave me it's where I found a lot of my value or self-worth was my ability to perform well in sport.
Right.
Played baseball. Didn't like baseball as much as I loved basketball, and was probably better at basketball than baseball. Played... a couple of things growing up. Went to elementary school, and one thing that happened in elementary school that bugged me later on in life was, I think I was told I flunked kindergarten.
Oh, really?
I'm going.
Who does that?
Who does that? What? You didn't share properly, or you didn't
right.
take a good nap, or whatever. What I learned just a few years back was that my birthday's in August, and now it's fairly common that if your birthday's late in that summer season, you can repeat or be held back a year before.
Do another year, yeah.
The advantage of being held back, though, gave me in junior high and high school, I'm a year older than everybody and have a little more advantage of competing in sport.
Yeah, right.
In junior high school, I was cut from the 9th grade basketball team, and it pissed me off.
Oh, yeah.
But the coach's name was Egan. And Robin Egan. And if you're listening, Robin, I'll work through this resentment one day before I die. But I vowed going to high school I would I would never be cut again. And I made the high school team. The other interesting thing about growing up, being held back, when I entered high school, I had my driver's license on day one. That makes for a guy that has a lot of friends.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, looking back, that was not... It was one of my weaknesses is wanting people to like me. I have a tough time liking me if others don't like me.
Right.
Still struggle with that character defect now, but I understand it and can talk my way through certain things.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of friends growing up in high school.
Real quick, I think a lot of people can relate with what you just said. We worry what other people think, and we want people to like us. Yeah. I think we all on some level wrestle with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Recovery's really taught me, one of my mantras inside my brain is that your opinion of me is none of my business.
Right.
And it sounds good when I say it out loud,
but
I still struggle internally going, no, it does. It really matters, man.
Well, I've always thought this. I think it does. I think we all do matter on some level. It's like, hey, we shouldn't worry about what other people think, but we do. But I also think this is when we're doing the right things, I mean, I think most people are going to probably view you in a good light.
Yeah.
At this, you know what I mean? Most people, I'm sure, Christian, view you in a good light. Maybe not during that certain period we'll get to here in a minute, but I mean, obviously, what you do here is fantastic, and the way you carry yourself is awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Seriously.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
So growing up, adolescent, never, with the exception of smoking the butt end of a cigarette, which I learned later on was probably truly the butt end of a cigarette, and sampling clear alcohol, which was probably vodka. Other than that, I mean, it was a tiny sample. Other than that, I'd never engaged in using mood and mind altering substances. The only problem that kicked my butt in high school, the one that kicked my butt big, was I was horny. Can you say that on your show?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always had a girlfriend. And it feeds right back into that people liking me. I can like me if you all like me.
Yeah.
So I always had a girlfriend, and I always was trying to push the envelope with regard to intimacy,
Yeah.
If you give me a kiss, maybe I can get a French kiss and just push that envelope. But in high school, grades were mediocre. That wasn't important to me to get high high grades. I did what I had to get by. It was probably, I know exactly what it was, 2.8 when I graduated high school, and which I'm proud of because I didn't do any studying. So anyway, sarcasm. But I go, in the junior year, things started to change a little bit in my life. In my junior year of high school, they got a new coach, and the new coach, basketball coach, came to me and a couple other guys and said, "You're going to make the team, but just be advised, you're not going to play. And I'm going in a different direction, and so I want to be respectful to you guys." And I'm thinking, I don't want to, if I'm going to go play basketball in high school, I really don't want to go run wind sprints and ladders and all that other stuff to sit on the bench.
For sure, yeah.
So one of my buddies came up with the idea of, hey, why don't we try out for cheerleader? I'm thinking, well, that sounds fun. So me and 3 other buddies, we tried out. You didn't have to be very gymnastic on that as a guy. We had 4 girls and 4 guys. That was the
so you made it.
Squad. We all 4 made it. It was the funnest senior year ever.
Really?
That senior, it was just fun for a guy that had girly friends. I had a girlfriend in every high school. Sorry, Kelly, but my wife's Kelly.
Right.
She already knows this.
She knows this, yeah.
And so then after high school, one thing that comes up, it would come up later on that during that high school cheerleading experience, I broke my back. That will come into play a few years down the road. But just be advised that doing some of the stunts that we would do, it appears that I fractured my back, L5-S1 area.
Oh, wow.
And
so
I graduate high school. I'm a active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the right thing for a guy graduating high school to do at that time in 1979 was go on a mission.
Yeah.
And so I better go on a mission. My mom and dad want me to go on a mission, and it seems to be the right thing. So I went and served 2 years in South Africa in 1979. That was right during the apex of apartheid. The bad thing for me is I didn't learn to adult during that time, meaning I never made a bed. I never washed any dishes, never fixed any food, ironed any clothes. That we had servants that would do that for us.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so that was not good for just learning how to adult.
Right. Yeah.
Writing during that time, I was writing a girl. I was writing a couple of girls. Again, Kelly already knows this. And I get home from that mission, and I'm horny. The remedy for a returned missionary who has that is to get married.
Hurry and get married, right?
So Kelly and I was engaged to be married 7 days after I got home from my mission.
Wow.
That's kind of messed up.
That is fast. Yeah.
And we married Kelly and I married in, let's see. Shoot, that's terrible. 82.
82.
February of 82.
Okay.
Coming up on 40 years here in a few months.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah. And that kind of takes me, childhood,
years.
Close siblings to this day. We were close growing up. We're close now. My younger siblings I didn't know really well because there was such a gap there. But to this day, they're some of my best friends.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the family life. We went to, I brought up the mission thing. We were raised LDS, and that was the foundation of my value system or belief system, is that there is a God. Christ is the center point of my belief system.
Yeah.
And we were raised disciplinary wise. We didn't raise our voice in our house. That was never good. You can get kicked out of a basketball game or teed up or whatever.
Right.
But that's okay, but not in the house. Don't raise our
bring
voice.
it home, right?
And I got spanked a few times growing up. I bring that up because there was a level of and I don't mean to offend those that really have severe trauma, but there was a level of trauma associated with the way we were disciplined. When Dad would spank me, and he didn't do it very often, but there was a message being sent in my brain. The story in my head was, you don't love me now. It wasn't that you did something wrong.
Okay.
We're trying to correct the behavior. It was, I don't love you right now.
Wow.
And put that in my head with all the other crazy thoughts of, I can't love me if you don't love me. Now my own mom and dad don't love me. It was a foundation for really healthy shame.
Boy, yeah. Very healthy shame. And I think, again, our listeners that are hearing this can relate with that on a lot of levels. I think, I've been in this business for 30 plus years myself. I think the number one belief system I see in this is that they don't believe in themselves, or I'm not good enough, or so, and it stems from family didn't love me, my wife didn't love me, or my, whatever wherever it comes from. But it's pretty common,
Yeah.
Feeling that way.
And we've only really uncovered that in my own personal belief system over the last 12 years of a journey of recovery.
Yeah.
And we do hard now not to perpetuate that type of thinking.
For sure.
Within my kids and my grandkids.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned that, growing up, you didn't really even touch drugs or alcohol or anything like that. And but you do have a story around that, and you've been an addict in your life, and it's caused you go down a path that you probably never dreamed of going down. So let's talk about that. I think our listeners need to know. Obviously you're raised in a good way. I know you guys weren't perfect by any stretch, but tell us what happened and why you went down this road and what happened that kind of led you to that.
I guess that journey began when shortly after Kelle and I married. So I already talked a little bit about our communication style growing up was very, very passive. The clinicians would call it passive, or close to passive aggressive, because we speak fluent sarcasm. And that's typically therapists, experts don't, that's not a healthy form of communication.
Yeah.
And I understand that, because truly I speak sarcasm, our family does.
Yeah.
But really, if you look at that, there's always a victim. When somebody throws out sarcasm, there really is always a victim. And if my brother Scott's listening, he's just nodding his head. See, I've told you that, brother.
Been telling you that for years. Yeah.
Or Chris Groves, another counselor, I've told you that for years.
Yeah.
But so we didn't communicate very assertively and never aggressive. We rarely were raising our voice. But I married a gal who came from an upbringing, also large family. I think she's the oldest of 7. Their form or style of communication was what you experts would call very assertive. I called it yelling.
Yeah.
But it did, so Kelle and I marry.
Yeah.
I do something dumb, which is just my natural disposition most of the time. And Kelle would communicate like she was brought up communicating, very assertively. And to me, it sounded like she was yelling at me. What were you thinking of? What the heck did you do that for?
Yeah.
And when those experiences would happen, there was something inside me that just went, oh, I couldn't breathe. I don't care how big you are. Let's go play. If we're playing basketball or football or whatever it is, let's go.
Yeah.
But this tiny little 90-pound soaking wet blonde wife of mine would come at me verbally a little bit of, what are you thinking? What were you doing?
Yeah.
With judgment. And I wanted to crawl under a table. I wanted to hide. I didn't know how to cope with that.
Yeah.
And make sure everybody hearing this, our families did the best we could.
For
My
sure.
issues had nothing to do with my mom and dad's parenting skills. They did the best they could with what they had. So I'm not pointing fingers. I'm really just trying to say this is how it all came together.
Yeah.
So Kelle and I married. She comes at me the way she's been taught, which I think is a healthier way to communicate than the way I was brought up in this sort of passive manner. 3 years after we're married, I'm in a motorcycle accident. Now, many people listening to this will know the rest of the next 27 years.
Yeah, wow.
There, I'm taken by ambulance to St. Mark's Hospital, broken leg, a bunch of road rash, and sent home the next day with a bottle of Percodan. And I remember the bottle was a large bottle. And on the label, it said take 1 or 2 pills as needed for pain. So sometime quickly in this recovery process, my brain figured something out, that I could take 1 or 2 of those pills and the physical pain, the road rash, the broken leg, that would go away. But somehow it figured out if I took 3 or 4, not only would that pain go away, Kelle could come at me all she wanted, and it didn't hurt anymore. And I would heal from that motorcycle accident and be fine for a minute.
Yeah.
But you can't play Mormon basketball without finding yourself in the emergency room.
Yeah, the brawl that starts with a prayer.
It does. It starts with the prayer.
It's like, let's all pray, everyone, let's have a good time, and then it's like
Yeah.
a brawl.
It's crazy to me. I look
It is
back
the
and-
weirdest thing,
it is.
right?
I look back and go, what were we thinking? There were NBA scouts sitting on the stage in that chapel thing. I mean, what the heck was I thinking about, man?
Yeah.
But so what happened each time I would get injured, and keep in mind, Kelle has worked for Intermountain Healthcare for 35 years. And at this time, she's working in the emergency room at Cottonwood. They love Kelle.
Right.
So when I went in there, they were treating me like gold and like
Right.
family.
Sure.
What do you know, it's not broke, Christian. It's just a sprain, but what do you do for pain? What do you take for pain? Anything special? And I would deliberately mispronounce the med that was working best for me. I would say Laura something. Lortab? Yeah, there's no A in it, right? It's Lortab. Then I would go, yeah, that's it.
Why would you do that?
I didn't want people to think I was drug seeking.
Oh, okay.
It was
So it was
just
your
a-
way to
yeah,
say,
it was-
hey, I don't even
yeah,
know the names
yeah,
of these things,
yeah.
so you're definitely not drug seeking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kelle and I have talked about how many years went by from the motorcycle accident until I was using opiates 24/7. And we figure somewhere around 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
It got to the point where I had figured out a coping mechanism. I didn't even know none of us knew what road we were down, and a long ways down it. So, because I'm functioning at that time professionally, when I finished college at the U, I'm working now in the medical device arena, representing mechanical heart valves and cardiovascular grafts. I'm in the operating room all the time. We're making a good living. Kelly's in the emergency room at Cottonwood making a good living. But I found myself just the window between using was shortening to I was using 24/7 because I didn't want withdrawals. Withdrawals were just horrific for me.
Yeah.
Hated them.
And we hear this a lot, right? Where it's like, I want to come off of these or stop doing them, but man, when I start feeling that sickness, no way.
Yeah.
Keeps you stuck.
That was before Subutex or Suboxone was around. So it was, I think there were some methadone clinics back in the day, but other than that, it was kind of white knuckle it.
Yeah.
Now let me pause for a second. And during that time period too, probably 5-6 years into it, I'm working in the medical device arena, and I'm going to a training seminar in Kansas City, Kansas, that was my first experience drinking alcohol. So I'm taking pain pills semi-regularly and functioning very high. I'm not missing a beat, and
working
and
full
everything's
time,
good.
all that. Yeah, everything's going good.
Yeah. My first experience drinking alcohol, we went to that training, announced who we were and where we were from. That first night, we get with everybody that's at the training seminar. There's probably a dozen of us. And they said, hey, you said you're from Salt Lake City. Are you Mormon? And I quickly said, yes, I am. And then added, but I'm not very active, which was a lie. That was my belief system. I would be, by definition, an active member of that organization at that time. But it takes me right back to all that. I don't want you not to like me, and don't judge me. So I will fib a little bit and
soften it a little bit. Like, I'm not like this diehard.
I'm not this fuddy-duddy guy.
Yeah,
I'm a
okay.
fun guy. And
So
after dinner, many of them went over to the little piano bar, and I decided I didn't want to go to my room. I don't want to be alone there. So I went over, and quickly into that, they said, hey, why don't you try this drink? And okay, whatever, sure.
Yeah.
And they passed me over and bought me it was called the Bartles and James wine coolers.
Bartles and James, yeah.
You got to be a little older.
Yeah, that's old school stuff, yeah.
But I remember drinking that and going, holy cow, this tastes like Sody Pop.
Mm-hmm.
They kept buying, I kept drinking, and my next memory was waking up in the hallway of that hotel outside the door of the room I was staying. My first experience drinking alcohol, I drank alcoholically. I passed out. There is a side story that we'll tell another day on that night, but that was my first experience, and that would be repeated time and time again for the next 20 plus years. So I get back Salt Lake. Oh, I'll tell you the story real quick. I'll make it quick.
Okay.
That night, while I'm under the influence of alcohol for the first time, I'm pretty friendly. And there was a piano bar player there, and she was cute. And so I was flirting. And the people I were with were going, hey, this is cool. We got this little Mormon guy, and let's just have some fun. And nothing intimately was inappropriate that night. It was inappropriate for me to flirt.
Right.
And I would violate that value. Over the next 20 years, I'd violate that value of being faithful to my wife. But I didn't on that night. But the funny story that we can chuckle at now, Kelle and I, is I get home from that trip, and a week or so after I'm home, I walk home, and my wife's sitting at the kitchen table. She's got her arms crossed and her arms folded and her legs crossed. And one of the legs is just moving, just up and down, up and down, which is the sign for anybody that's married of, oh, crap.
You're in trouble.
There's some crap that's gone down.
Put on your seatbelt, because here we go.
Yeah. So Kelle calls, and I'm racking my brain, with a smile on my face. What's she doing that for? Well, I don't think I've done anything. And she says to me, do you have anything you want to tell me? I said, no, I don't have anything. You sure? No, I'm good. Well, can you explain? And she slides across the kitchen table this envelope from the mail. Can you explain this? I said, sure. I can explain that. I have no idea what's in it, but so I open it up, and there is a black and white 5x7 black and white picture of a scantily clad piano bar player with the handwritten caption, "Thanks for the wonderful night. Love, Tish." Who does that?
Oh my gosh.
Who does it? I don't remember any time giving her my information, but I surely clearly did. And again, I just speak to that as my first experience with alcohol. It just didn't work for me, and it never did. I would pick up a DUI in 2001, and alcohol, I'm allergic to it.
Yeah.
So life's going on. I'm back working in the OR, taking more and more pain pills. Then I uncover back pain that was radiated down my left leg. Going to the specialist, and they uncover what was a fractured back with spondylolisthesis, degenerative disc disease, and stuff on the L5S1. And the alternatives at that time were surgery, which I immediately dismissed because I'd had guys that had that surgery, and it got worse.
Yeah.
And the other one was just pain management. And the way they managed the pain was Oxycontin. Oh, and fentanyl suckers. I mean, it was just insane as I look back. I was taking Oxycontin. I was taking oxycodone for breakthrough pain, and I was taking fentanyl suckers and fentanyl patches. Jeez. And so for me at the time, this is nirvana.
Yeah, you feel great. Yeah, it's wonderful.
I'm
best
awesome.
Thing ever.
During that time, we had 4 children born. The oldest is Adam. His brother Chad, they're somewhere around the age 36, 34. I'm not a very good dad for that. I can tell you the ages.
We all struggle with the ages, trust me. I got 4 kids myself, and I'm like, okay, I think they're this age.
Yeah. So in 2000, let's see, 2001, I picked up the DUI. Adam, our oldest, would have been a teenager, because I remember Kelle. Now things are getting out of control a little bit, and Kelly's getting concerned. I know Adam was a teenager in 2001, because when I called Kelle from the jail, can you come and pick me up? By the way, will you not? It was my first legal experience. Would you not bring any of the kids? Please.
Yeah.
She deliberately brought the oldest, thinking that would have an impact. It did. It did have an impact, but we didn't know the stress level just increased.
Yeah,
and with that increased stress level, I self-medicated more. I felt terrible. So Adam's now 14, 15 at that time, and by the time he's 19, he goes on a mission, and I'm in full-blown drinking, and I'm drugging. I can't get my prescriptions to last 30 days, so I can get them to last 2 weeks, and now I'm buying stuff off the street, and I'm going through a lot of money. Also, during that time period, I would have struggled with gambling. I'm not a good gambler because I get inebriated.
Yeah.
And I remember once I won a big pot playing Texas Hold'em, and I went home and showed everybody all this money. It was a lot of money, $25,000. And
Yeah.
and I remember my mom said to me, you know, and I said, "Look at this, Mom. I'm a good gambler."
Look
She
at
goes,
me. Yeah.
"I'm sorry." I'm thinking, "What do you mean you're sorry?" "I'm sorry that you won that pot." Well, I thought she was an idiot, but now I know she knew exactly what
Yeah.
could happen and what did happen.
Oh, wow.
Was that would just, I'd chase that and lose many, many times that money in losses. And during that time now we're financially, it's being tough with Kelle and
It's putting a financial strain on
Yeah.
your guys' family.
yeah. So in 2006, let me back up. In 2004, I had surgery for the back, and it fixed it. They put cage. They screwed, fused, and caged L5S1.
And this stems back from when you broke your back as a cheerleader.
Cheerleader, yeah.
Okay.
I remember going into that surgery, I had two fears. You know, one was, what if it got worse?
Mhm.
I had friends who had similar surgeries
Yeah.
that it got worse. And my other big fear was, you know, what if it got better? Then what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I manage and medicate this pain in my heart and in my head?
Man.
So I remember that night after the surgery in the hospital, the pain was different. It wasn't the pain that radiated down the left leg. It was a pain that was just from medical experts beating the crud out of my low back, and
Yeah.
that pain's gone away. From that night, that pain's gone away. But the pain in my heart and in my mind was still there, and so I picked up gambling. I was engaged in pornography and the behaviors associated with it, and I'm losing money and not really working as much anymore. And
Yeah.
Kelle comes to me in 2006 and says, you know, I don't want to live with you anymore.
Mm.
You got to go. And my first thought, which was a lie, was that's fine. I didn't want to be with you anyways, which was just, looking back, was
your way to protect the hurt and the pain of what you just heard, right?
exactly what it was.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I left there. The only place I could go stay, family, they loved me. I knew they loved me, but they were exhausted, you know.
Yeah.
But the only place I could go stay was my mom and dad had a basement apartment in their house in North Salt Lake. They were out of the country on a mission for their church. And that neighborhood was the worst neighborhood on the planet in my mind for me at the time.
Mm.
The neighbor to the east was a guy named Robert D. Hells, and the neighbor to the west was a guy named David Bednar. There's no fences between these houses, right? So
That's a rough neighborhood.
Oh yeah, it was just because I'm just filled with shame, and
Yeah.
it was just I didn't
Yeah.
need that. And during that time, within a few days, I'm introduced by a drug friend, if you will, to a new drug. Within a few days of me leaving Kelle, our house in Sandy, the drug was crack.
Mm.
And I remember going, "Holy cow! You know, where has this been
Yeah.
all my life?" Everything went away when I was on that pipe. Looking back, you know, that was accurate for the time.
Yeah.
Everything went away.
Wow.
No car, no family whatsoever, no money. Everything went away. And so to fund the crack cocaine habit, I was stealing stuff from my family, pawning it. Mom had a large collection of what I think is called yadro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Porcelain.
My mother-in-law has a bunch of those. Yeah.
And the pawn shop loved them. And so I'm pawning those to fund this cocaine habit, drinking a little bit, haven't had pain pills since.
Out of the house you were staying in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And my siblings got wind of it and said, "We're not doing this anymore." And so they said, "You can't stay here." And now I'm homeless for a minute. One day I'm down at Pioneer Park, which is where I would spend my time trying to figure out how to get my fix. And I see two North Salt Lake police drive up there. And I'm thinking, they're out of their jurisdiction. And I just came from North Salt Lake. And sure enough, I see these two police officers scanning the park and eventually find me and identified me as Christian Smith. And the long story made short there is I'd spend the next year and a half in jail. And I remember when I was in there, I have a lot of jail experiences that I can chuckle at now, but one of them is they should give you a set of rules when you've never been to jail, because I got myself in trouble by saying some words that weren't appropriate for jail.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
But I'm in there and I'm going to court. I got my main court hearing 43 days into jail, and all the expert attorneys inside the jail, did you catch that? They're inmates, the expert attorneys inside the jail.
Yes, right.
They're telling me, you're going to get out. I don't have any history other than this of legal stuff.
You're getting out.
You're getting out.
Yeah.
So I remember that morning I went to court, and as I walked into the courtroom, all my siblings were in the courtroom, and Kelle was in the courtroom, my wife. And I'm going, this is awesome. Yeah, they're here to support me. And the judge talks. I had a court-appointed attorney, and after a few minutes, the judge says, I'm ready to sentence you. And he says, I sentence you to 365 days in the Davis County Jail. Order me to a drug program. I turn to the attorney and say, we don't want to do this. The attorney goes, dude, it's done.
No, this is it.
So I fired him right there and said, Your Honor, and I'm shackled. You have to appreciate this. You have to have been there.
Yeah,
I shackled, raised my hand to the Your Honor, this is not right. Yeah, that's exactly. You can't see what he's doing now, but imagine your hand shackled and you're trying to reach to the sky. It goes about 6 inches above your waist. So I said, Your Honor, this is not right. I'm doing much, much better now. And if you don't believe me, ask my family. And I'll never forget his words. John Memmott, who I would just give a hug if I ever saw him.
Yeah.
He said, Mr. Smith, I've heard enough from your family. And dropped the gavel, and I'd spend the next year and a half on a year sentence in jail. And I'll never forget those words, I've heard enough from your family. Turns out they had written letters to the judge. The gist of the letters were, we love our brother. We just don't know how to help him. And if you give those letters to a judge like John Memmott will say, I'll help you.
Yeah.
And he did everything he could. While in jail, I wouldn't wish that experience on anybody.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade mine for the world, because it's where I began the healing. Oh, I'd still relapse after jail, and you'll hear that in a minute. But on one catalytic event that I had in jail was I'm pissed at God, pissed at my family, pissed at everybody. I'm pissed at me, right? I'm angry at everybody.
Sure.
And it would start with me.
Yeah.
And one guy that was there, a guy named Jeff Carter, finishing out a prison sentence, we would talk every once in a while, and we'd start talking about God and stuff. And we would play chess in the morning. In jail, for an old guy, was 48 at the time.
Yeah.
The mornings were great.
Yeah.
Because it was quiet. After breakfast or tray pass, most of the inmates went back to bed.
Yeah.
I'm an old guy. I don't sleep on 2-inch foam pads very well.
Exactly. You're like, no what? I'm not going back in there.
So one day we're playing chess, and we're starting to talk about God a little bit, and we're interrupted by a guy from Honduras who said, what's all this thing you guys are talking about God and this Jesus thing all the time? And I was spiritually bankrupt, so much so that my response to him was, hey, Jonathan, we're playing chess. Walk on, buddy. And the guy I'm playing chess with, Jeff Carter, says, hey, here's a book. Why don't you read this book, and if you have any questions, feel free to come back. And I thought Jeff was genius. Yeah. It was the Book of Mormon. Mm-hmm. Any LDS folk will know that. And I'm thinking, this is great. We'll never see this guy again. I was wrong. We would see him every morning. He would interrupt our chess game, and I was just mad.
Yeah, you're like, this is my time.
Yeah.
Right?
But I started to come out of this spiritual bankruptcy during that time, and we would talk about principles of Christianity and whatnot. And we're doing this, and keep in mind, at that time I'm in Salt Lake County, ADC. But I know every day I'm in ADC, the reason it was a year and a half on a year sentence is I'm waiting to be transferred from Salt Lake County to Davis County, where I have to do the full year. So every night I would go to bed and say to these guys, probably won't see you again. They're going to probably roll me up, only to wake up for almost 6 months to Groundhog Day. And so as we're doing this, and we're teaching John about Christianity and whatnot, and we're running out of things to teach him. And one night, Jeff and I decide, we didn't know what to teach him, and so somehow we come up with the idea of this thing called The Atonement. And I remember thinking, I got this.
Yeah.
I know everything there is to know about the atonement.
Right. It's my wheelhouse here.
So I went to my cell that night and prepared kind of a presentation on the atonement. And the next morning would be the first catalytic event that would change my life. And it went like this. Started with telling Jonathan about the belief that we had that we lived before we came, and talked about the need for a Savior, and talked about the birth of Christ and a little bit of his life and the miracles he was involved in, and culminating it with his betrayal from a friend, the events in Gethsemane, and him being betrayed by a friend, and ultimately him losing his life on the cross.
Yeah.
And I thought it was good stuff, and it was an hour into it. I'm finished, and Jonathan leans over the table, puts his hands on mine on this cold metal table inside that jail, and looks me in the eyes and says, "Why? Why did this Jesus do these things?" And my first thought was, are you an idiot? I spent the last hour plus telling you.
Yeah.
And it was then that I had this distinct thought placed in my mind. It was almost as if my grandfather had his arms on my shoulders, and he might have. And he said to me, "Christian, the question this man asks you, you don't know the answer. You think you do,
Yeah.
but you really don't know the answer.
Wow.
And until you can find out and truly believe the answer, life's going to be tough for you." So I listened for a minute what was told in my heart and in my mind, and I looked back at Jonathan and said, "Jonathan, he did this because he loves me, a liar, a cheat, a thief, an addict, an alcoholic. And if I would look to just change my ways, this could all be forgotten." I never saw Jonathan again. That night I was rolled up and transferred to Davis County.
Wow.
And I don't think that's coincidental.
Yeah.
It was the foundation for some change. I finished the program at Davis County and get out, go back home to Kelle. She starts visiting early on, and go back home where now Kelle and my two younger daughters were there, and life was good for a few weeks. But I never dealt with in that jail program. I never dealt with what was going on in my heart and my mind, my thought processes, my thinking errors. I never dealt with the shame that I was caught up in inside my mind. And so when Kelly's expectation of getting a job and some stress crept up, my brain reverted to, this stress could kill you.
Yeah.
So maybe we got to go manage it. And the idea of managing it was back to crack cocaine.
What a thinking error,
Yeah.
right? Jeez.
Yeah. And so Kelle quickly figured out I'd relapsed, and she said, "You can't stay here." That was her boundary.
Wow.
And so now I'm homeless. And it was in November, December, and it was cold.
Cold, yeah.
And I'm down at the homeless shelter and down in the Pioneer Park area, and I'm not in a good place. The only thing I had was an insurance policy that was through Kelly's employment. I've been to treatment. I've been to a couple of outpatient centers prior to this, but I went because Kelle wanted me to go, and the kids and my family, mom and dad.
Yeah.
But at this moment, I remember downtown, it's cold, and the only thing I called Kelle and say, and she didn't take very many of my calls, but she took one, and would you help me get in a treatment program? She said, "I won't. But if you'd like to get in a treatment program, I wish you luck." And
So putting it all on you.
yeah.
You want it, then prove it.
And so for the first time, Todd, I wanted it bad. It wasn't working anymore. And I made the phone calls. I picked up the phone and found a place that was Little Cottonwood, and went to treatment for 83 days of residential. And during that time, I love residential treatment. I was the poster boy for residential treatment. It was fun.
Yeah, sure.
I learned a lot during that time. We brought Kelle in, and 3 of my 4 kids came in, and we processed, and we began to a foundation to build on for future recovery and relationships. And I get out of that program, and I'm happy. I go home, and Kelle has a list on a napkin, handwritten list on a napkin of 4 deal breakers. You can come home, but there are 4 deal breakers.
Okay.
3 of the 4 I think are appropriate. They all are, but I'm making fun of one of them. You got to get a job. Well, first was you can't use. That's fair.
Fair.
Second was you got to get a job. That's fair.
Fair.
Third one was you got to get your driver's license reinstated, which is fair because I'm on probation driving without one.
Absolutely.
That's problematic.
Yeah.
But the 4th reason I chuckle at, we still have the napkin.
You do?
Yeah, we still have the napkin. The 4th reason was you got to go to church. Now, my LDS friends that might be listening to this, I am active LDS, so please forgive me if this offends you. Put it in a step 4 or whatever you got to do. Because I remember raising my arms to the sky and go, oh, hell yes, thank you. If only I'd have thought about this years ago, all this shit never would have happened, you know?
Right, yeah.
Total sarcasm.
Oh, my gosh.
And so as fate would have it, 6 days in after I'm in rehab, I go to get my driver's license reinstated. I had a guy offer me a job. A good friend, Carl Tobler, offered me a job, but I had to have a driver's license. So go down to the driver's license DMV with $40 because that's what we figured it would cost to reinstate it.
Right.
And go to the clerk, fill out the paperwork. She says, Mr. Smith, I don't need your $40. I need you, however, to go to the courthouse and have them sign off on this privilege of driving something certificate thing.
Yeah.
And I smiled. I smiled and said, okay, but I wasn't smiling on the inside.
Yeah.
Because the last time I'd gone to the courtroom, they'd kept me for a year and a half. So my stress just skyrocketed.
Yeah,
I get in the car, and the brain of monkeys in my head, they started to call a meeting. And they were saying, you're pretty stressed. You got $40. And while that's going on in the parking lot of Taylorsville DMV, I had a BlackBerry or Blueberry. I forget what that phone was called.
BlackBerry.
One day I'll remember that.
BlackBerry, Blueberry, it's all the same.
And it rings. And it's Kelle. And she says, how are you doing? And again, I'm stressed to the gild.
Right.
But I lie and smile and say, I'm fine. Just got to go to the court and get this. Just played it off. My ego was just my pride was just killing me.
Right.
So hung up with her. The Committee of Monkeys held a vote. Do we go to the courtroom now, or do we go to Pioneer Park now and spend the $40 and then to the courtroom? We voted. I'm sure it was unanimous that I end up down at Pioneer Park. While I'm getting the cocaine, the crack, while I'm doing a deal in my car, the phone rings again. I answer it this time, and you've heard a little bit of this experience.
Yeah.
This is my good friend and at the time therapist from treatment, Jason Webb. And I remember just, I'm good, Webb. I'm fine. I mean, you had to have been there to appreciate this. Hold on just a second, Jason. Yeah, do you have $40 worth of white?
Yeah.
No, I'm doing good, Webb. 40 sort of thing. And so that turned into 10 days. I was gone 10 days. Sold everything I had to fund it, including the car I was driving, which was my daughter Sarah's car.
Oh my gosh.
And it lasted 10 days. You heard that part where on the end of the 10 days, I used the phone I was crashing at because I'd sold that BlackBerry.
Yeah.
And checked my voicemail, and a lot of voicemail. And Jason Webb had left a couple, my friend and counselor. First couple were, I'm concerned about you, call me. It crescendoed to, dude, this is ridiculous. That's about as angry as he can get, by the way.
Yeah.
And then the last message was probably the final catalog event I needed to hear. And you've heard that before. That last message was, Christian, it's Jason. Have I told you I love you lately? No judgment, just unadulterated. Yeah. I'm concerned about you and I love you. Gave me the courage to pick up the phone and call Jason and say I'm not in a good place. I'll never forget that day because it is the last time I've ever ingested any mood or mind-altering substances. That was February 4th, 2010. And something happened there in my mind. I realized it never worked. It never, ever, ever worked for me. That was supposed to be $40 in a couple of hours, and it turned into 10 days. And selling everything that didn't belong to me again.
Going right back to it.
So I made a commitment. I'm not picking up. Went back to treatment for 30 days, did the outpatient, did sober living as a 48, 49-year-old guy, and was brutally difficult. Was awesome, looking back. You know how tough it is for a 49-year-old to ride a bike or take the bus?
Oh, dude.
It'll humble you.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I just picture you riding a bike on the street, you know. I had a friend who got a couple DUIs and anyway, lost his license, this and that. Older guy, you know, he's got a family, kids, the whole night. And he's got to ride his bike to work. And I'm talking, it wasn't just a little jaunt. He had to go, and he literally was getting on the freeway, and he gets a ticket because you can't ride a bike. The ironic thing, he gets a ticket on the freeway. So that's why I started to chuckle. I was picturing you getting pulled over on your bike. Hey, I'm doing the right thing here. I'm just riding my bike. Well, you're not supposed to be on the freeway. Wow. Why do you think those words hit you so hard in that moment? I love you. Why was that so profound for you? Did you, was it like you didn't feel like you were even loved? I mean, what was it?
I think a lot of it is what you just said. I rarely felt lovable. I think I felt lovable. And a lot of this is my misunderstanding of religion. I was brought up to kind of, nobody ever said it, but it was implied, or the message I heard was from the God of my understanding at the time was, I will love you, Christian, as long as you're doing all the right things all the time.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not, I can't love you. It took me right back to that 9-year-old boy being disciplined by his dad. I don't love you now, son. I'm going to have to do this because I don't love you. Totally wrong. I mean, that's just not what it is. And it would be a couple years before I really figured things out with God. I fired the God I knew as a boy. That God was that disciplinarian, that spanker.
Yeah.
I fired him, and
that umpire that's going to strike one more, and you're in trouble, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a great analogy, the umpire. That's 3 strikes, Christian. You're out, buddy.
You're done.
And there is no coming back, pal. And so part of that was when Jason said, you know, have I told you I love you? I needed to feel that I could be loved.
Yeah.
And was humble enough at that point to really drop my pride and say, I'll do anything. Prior to that, I wouldn't have gone to sober living. I'm 48 years old. Are you out of your frickin' mind?
Right.
But now I'll do whatever you say because my way was not working. And so there was 2 fronts. There was the front of the mental health experts, the thinking errors, the poor communication. That was going on and helping me figure that out, while another front was being fought on this understanding between the difference between religion and spirituality.
Yeah.
One of the events that was powerful to me was when I said to my dad, hey, I'm not sure I'm going to go back to this Mormon thing. And I figured I was in for a fight with Dad.
Yeah.
And instead he goes, hey, son, I don't care if you ever go back to a church building. I'm not concerned about that at all. Giving me license and freedom to, wait a minute, you're still going to be my dad if I choose not to go down that road? Mm-hmm. He went on and said, what I really care about is that you have a relationship with deity. And all of a sudden, I started figuring out, wait a minute, I don't have to go to a church building to find spirituality. Well, let me explore that. You know, I'm in on that. And I still go to a church building. I'm active, but I don't find my spirituality inside that building most of the time.
Yeah.
I find it in the quiet moments of the morning.
Yeah.
Looking into the eyes of young grandchildren who know nothing but love.
Wow. Isn't that true?
Mountains
so true.
Where the heavens can say, you know, hey, Christian, I know who you are. I know the pain you're going through.
Yeah.
And you matter to me.
I love that. That's amazing.
Since that time, you heard me say in the beginning, Kelly and I will celebrate 40 years of marriage in February. We're very lucky. I'm very blessed. But, the gifts of changing, the gifts of looking to do something different.
Yeah.
We call it recovery. I kind of call it change.
Yeah.
The gifts of change are that Kelly and I are better now than we've ever been in our relationship and continue to get better. We're more open with one another and honest, less judgmental.
Yeah.
We communicate much healthier.
Yeah.
And it's with simple stuff like you all experts would give me communication tools, and I started to use them. For example, Kelly would say, Kelly's this red personality. She is in your face, and I'm not. I'm yellow, unless we're playing sport. Then I'll be in your face.
Yeah.
But she would say something, and I would go, whoa. Before I would internalize that and start having stories in my head like, what is she doing now? I would say to her, Kelly, hey, stop. Did you deliberately mean to hurt my feelings with what you just said? And she would pause, and we do this regularly. Oh, no, I don't know what you heard me say, but, oh, no, I didn't try to hurt your feelings deliberately. Or then we can get to the crux of the matter and talk about issues. I don't believe there's a perfect marriage. I don't think that exists.
Yeah.
We're better than we ever have been.
That's
the
great.
Children, our children are wonderful. They have forgiven their dad for a lot of hurt. And I dare say all four of them would be in the class of my best friends. We are open and we are honest. We don't judge. We shame less, love more. The other wonderful gifts I have of recovery are 7, soon to be 9 grandchildren.
Wow.
And they just know nothing but Gramps. I'm an okay husband. I'm a pretty good dad, but I'm a dang good granddad.
Yeah.
And a couple years ago, our oldest 2 grandchildren, we were taking them to McDonald's, Kelly and I. And they were 6 and 4.
Right.
And we're driving into the McDonald's, and they're in the back seat in their chair things. And Hallie Rose goes, Gramps, you went to jail, didn't you? I'm looking at Kelly like, exactly, where did this come from? What the heck, And I didn't know how to respond. We didn't rehearse this,
Yeah, right. Like, what do I say?
Yeah, I went to jail. Yeah, I did. I'm just trying to pass it off. And I'm looking at Kelly like, what is going on here? And then she followed up with, why'd you go to jail, Gramps? And before I could answer that, her younger brother, 4, Blake, says, you did drugs, didn't you, Gramps? I'm just thinking, gee, Adam and Natalie, you guys are not holding anything back, which is cool, right?
Yeah.
And all I could come up with to answer that was, I was pretty sick.
Yeah.
And looking back, Todd,
Yeah.
I'm not a bad guy. I wasn't a bad guy. I did some stupid and bad things.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I work in the business where
Yeah.
we're not dealing with bad people. We're dealing with people like me that were pretty sick.
Yeah.
And so, but it's just fun.
Well, and can I add, and I'm not trying to simplify this because I know it's way more complicated at times, but and the cure is love. Like, think about it, what you just said there, dude. Like, even your story, like, you're rebelling against, no one cares about me, I don't even care about me, and you're blowing up your life, and then you hear these words, have I told you lately I love you? And just the word love, it was almost like that's what you have been waiting for forever. And you were ready in that moment. And that's when you went, I'm not going back. I mean, it's just, I don't know. That's pretty freaking cool.
That light bulb went on. I'm in an AA meeting years ago.
Man.
And I'm still struggling with this being loved, this ability to be loved. And in order to be loved, you got to do all the right things all the right time.
Right.
Some old timer comes up to me after the meeting and says, knowing I'm struggling with this concept of God and love, he says, Christian, you got 4 kids, right? I said, sure, I do. He says, is there anything any of those kids could do that would stop you from loving them? And my immediate response was, heck no. he pressed me for a little bit. Are you sure about that? And pressed me. And I was thinking of our third child, and I hope she hears this because we have a little fun in our family. Sarah's crazy. She's nuts. She's, if you got one of those, if you ever have a tough kid, Sarah's fits the mold. She's defiant at the time. She's now a mother of soon to be two, and fabulous. But as an adolescent, she was, if you say, why don't you turn right, she would deliberately turn left. Your curfew is midnight. She would come home at 2, just pushing the buttons. And so my mind caught up when he's pressing me. No, I'm familiar with frustration as a dad and disappointment, but no, there's nothing my kids could do to stop me from loving them. And I'm not certain where he's going with this until he goes, "Hey, Christian, couldn't there be a God that could feel that same way about that God's kids? Just loves them because they're his kids, not because they do or don't do anything." Yeah. And that opened the door. Well, wait a minute, if that's true, and it felt like it was, that maybe I needed to reinvent my God, to have a God who just says, "You're my son, brother. I love you. Nothing you can do to stop me from loving you." Yeah. And that opened the door for me to reinvest in that relationship. And that's when I fired that God I knew as a young man, and the God I have now. I'm certain that that God says, you sure do some silly things, Smith, but I sure love you.
I love you. Wow. I love that. That's amazing.
The idea of perfection, that's nonsense.
Yeah, it is nonsense. Wow, Christian, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Very profound, very heart-wrenching at times. And, one thing, I've known you for a while now, just rubbing shoulders with you. You just have a good way it seems like you don't take things too serious. Like you'll laugh at things. You're like, that's funny, even though it's a serious thing, but I'll laugh at it a little bit. I think, again, I really do love the way you carry yourself. And I mean that wholeheartedly when I say that. Like, you have a good demeanor about you.
Thank you.
You really do. And I know there's some people right now that are listening to this who are struggling. I know that. I get too many messages that tell me so. If you could say something to someone who's listening right now, and you've already said some amazing things, but that one person right now who's in a dark place, what would you tell them right now?
I would probably say, don't give up. Don't give up. To that person struggling, don't give up. The only way, this disease kills a lot of people. You and I go to a lot of funerals, or invited to a lot of funerals.
Right.
But statistically, we survive. And if people just don't give up, there is hope. And for that family member who's going, I got the loved one that's kicking my butt.
Yeah.
And who's filled with anger, frustration, and resent, all appropriate, I would say don't give up, but love with appropriate love. Yeah. You and I see too many times when family members love our clients to death, literally.
Yeah.
And one of the, Jason Coombs, who I think you've had on this podcast before, he tells a story that I have a similar experience with my own dad, about his dad. Went to borrow some money from my dad as this thing's coming to a head just before he go to jail. Mm-hmm. And he leaves on the mission. Went to borrow some money from him. And he looked me in the eyes and said, "Son, I vowed I would never give you another penny to enable you to continue in the behaviors that you're in." He paused for a minute and then said with tears in his eyes, "I'll sell everything I have to get you the help you need. Now I need you to get the hell off my doorstep." That's the kind of love. I went away angry that day, like, you're not a very good...
Right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, man. But I always knew the love was there. And when the time was right, that they would be there when I was ready. That they sent the message of, I'm not going to enable you anymore, but I love you.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I think to me it's don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Great advice. I love it. Yeah. Well, Christian, if someone wanted to reach out to you and know more about what you do, maybe even what you do here at Wasatch Recovery, or they need help and they want to talk to you or have a question for you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Call me Facebook Messenger. I'm an old guy, but if it's okay, I'll give my phone out. It's my personal cell number.
It's up to you.
No, I love it because I love recovery. I wouldn't wish what I went through or many of us go through. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but you need to know I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't trade it. It's how I learned who I am.
Yeah.
And my phone number is area code 801-870-1379.
Wow.
I love recovery. We do change.
Yep. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking some time, man, honestly, and for being vulnerable today, and for just, again, being you and being willing to say, hey, here's what I've been through and look where I'm at now. And you, like you said, you wouldn't trade it for the world. Yeah. I hear that all the time. It's a beautiful thing, man. You're awesome.
I love you.
Love you too, brother.
Thanks.
And everyone listening to this, have we told you lately that we love you? And that's honestly the truth. I'm telling you, love is so powerful, and it sounds almost corny. Oh, I love you, love you. No, love. I think that is the thing that a lot of times are missing in someone who's struggling, is it's just, I need to know I'm loved. So thank you for sharing that. That just really hit me so hard. Well, there you go, folks. I told you this was going to be amazing. Please share this with anyone in your family who may be struggling. It doesn't have to be with addiction. It could be just, they're just struggling, and Christian's words will play upon their hearts and soften them. And if anything, maybe get them to a point where they might reach out to Christian. So please, he left his phone number. Please call him. And he does a great job here for us at Wasatch Recovery. We're grateful to have him as part of the team. He's just a great guy. And I agree with him. Don't give up. Whatever you're going through, you can change. That's been my own life. And I say this all the time. Addiction is the wake-up call to your greatness. It's trying to wake you up to the greatness that's in you. And I see this in Christian every day now. It's awesome. So, again, thanks to our sponsors. You guys are fantastic. And, I love you guys. And once again, Christian, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.